And we're live. Welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast, the official podcast of StarWarsReporter.com. We have lots to talk about today, but before we do, I'm going to introduce you to the other scoundrels. We'll start with Trooper Todd.
Hey, how's it going? Another week.
The guy who before we went live was bragging about all the hair he has.
That's right. Lots of hair.
And we also have Revenge of the Jason.
Hey, I just wanted to shout out to now I believe it's literally my hundreds of thousands of fans who are tuning into this. So hello, everybody. Thank you.
I'm a little jealous that Jason's hair is so dark still. Like, you know, I can grow hair. It looks like he's growing hair too, but look how dark his is. Like mine's like, ugh.
Yeah, but you've got that nice full head, the good hairline going. I'm starting to lose mine, but the hair, the color is natural though. I still have dark hair. Yes,
see, I applaud you.
I like where this podcast is going. It's almost like we need to have like a makeup tutorial or something, or like hair, because it's looking good. I won't tell the secret.
What'd you do with your hair today, Todd? Well, I woke up.
What did you do? Well, I did this crazy thing to my head, and it looks like I should be on a podcast for Vikings, the TV show.
You even have the shirt for that.
Well, I've been watching a lot of Clone Wars lately, kind of trying to catch up. You know, we've been talking lots about Clone Wars, which is directly relevant to Mandalorian. And, quite frankly, I see some of the clone troopers sporting a haircut.
Oh,
so,
yep.
Yeah, so there's a couple guys have the little the kind of mohawk sort of thing, and maybe it's not as long as yours is, but they haven't been wearing it as long as you have, probably.
That's what I was totally going for. That's exactly what I'm going for. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone to make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and of course, share this podcast with your friends. They'll totally appreciate you if you do. We're just trying to get the word out. And I didn't have logos here, but you can listen to the podcast on Spotify and SoundCloud. For those of you that want to deprive yourself of looking at these amazing gents.
You're like,
they have to
Universal.
Our hair now, though. They got to see the hair was knocking.
So the Walt Disney Investors Day happened, and people were all wondering what was going on, right? So I'm sure a lot of it was, boring numbers and stuff. But I think the big things for Star Wars fans and was a shock for a lot of people to talk of anything going on was this giant list of shows that they announced are upcoming.
That's
right?
huge.
So 10 different shows. A couple we already knew about, but look at this. Rangers of the New Republic, The Bad Batch, knew that was coming. Obi-Wan Kenobi, that was coming. Ahsoka, knew it. Andor, Lando, that was a shock. Visions, Rogue Squadron, Acolyte, and A Droid Story.
So there's a few that I've never heard of. I've even tried researching into it that I've never even heard of or seen any kind of promotional material for us. But very exciting laundry list of new Star Wars projects coming out.
Indeed.
It's really crazy. So, Jason, I'll start with you. With all these 10, and I'll point something out too before we get started. Out of all the future Star Wars projects, did you notice the one glaring thing that we didn't see?
If you're maybe referring to the alleged movies that were going to be planned, like the Rian Johnson trilogy is one right off the cuff.
No talk of movies.
I thought that Rian Johnson was scrapped.
Right, but it's never been really officially. At least he keeps saying that it's still a go on Twitter.
Oh,
but no talk. And again, it goes down to what I've always thought: the future of Star Wars is on Disney Plus, or at least they're trying to make it. And I bet you it's a lot easier for them to do this. And they're boasting between their streaming services 135 million subs. So they're doing well. But anyways, Jason, I'll go to you. Of the 10, which one are you most looking forward to?
Well, for me, I'm as much as I'm completely down with the TV format. Absolutely. We see the success of it with Mandalorian, but man, I am a sucker for big screen, epic all out Star Wars. And also as a fan of just the space battles and all that stuff, I am super excited for that Rogue Squadron movie. Also the director, the Wonder Woman director, and just reading a bit about her and her father and history as an actual pilot, which means that's going to be near and dear to her heart. They just mentioned something about, I don't know the exact wording, like just cutting edge and everything, but just as a fan of just the starship, and I know that's kind of, superficial to be sounding compared to all the stories and depth of character we get, but it does have me curious about the characters and all, for because that they barely said anything about it, but they did say that movie in particular was going to take the story into the future. And that's something that I'm interested in as well. As much as, again, I'm excited by all of this stuff. I think most of us, just about everybody, should be. But if I had one thing to nitpick about, I wish Star Wars would branch off in its timeline more. We've got, now we're going to have a ton of stuff that all still is within the Skywalker storyline in those decades. And I think you've got an entire galaxy, you've got an infinite amount of time backwards and forwards. And I'd really love to see more that goes on into the future, if not even with Rey and everybody, which, I think will happen eventually. I'd be excited to see it go beyond the timeline now, especially after Rise of Skywalker has been talked about. It's a big deal that it was the end of the saga. Yet all these shows kind of take place within the constraints and time frame of that saga, which again, that's fine. But I'd like to see things move forward, and Rogue Squadron has hinted that it may do that, as well as deliver some serious starship action, and we'll see what kind of characters we get.
So you say it was a movie, so we were saying so it's going to be a streaming movie only, available on Disney Plus. Is that correct, or is it going to be released in theaters?
There's a great question, I guess, with the state of the world right now.
No, it's going to be on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay.
So that's it.
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah.
Exclusive. Wow. Well, again, that's one way to get subscribers up for sure, right? You make exclusive content that people chomp at the bit for, right? Like I know Stranger Things, right, for Netflix attracts a lot of subscribers, right? So
absolutely.
Same thing, right? You're making a movie now, and absolutely. And right now, you don't even know what the sorry to interject there, Steve, but they don't know what Hollywood's going to look like. Like I know for a fact Disney's lost millions of dollars at the box office this year alone, right? Like they're still sitting on their latest Marvel release, which they haven't released. It was supposed to be Black Widow, supposed to release back in May, right? So how much money they invest in that movie? It still hasn't been released yet, right? And you got to think of the picks. There's been 2 Pixar films just sitting around waiting. It's a big, huge thing. So I imagine not announcing feature films is probably a good idea right now, because they probably don't want to invest the money until things clear up a bit.
Right. And you hit it on the head there, because that's it, right? It's like, what is the future of Hollywood? And maybe a lot of these executives are kind of getting wind of what the future is going to be, as in with lockdowns and whatever. So why not make some money? It's just going to be a lot easier, especially with movie theaters failing right now, right? Going bankrupt. And it doesn't look like the studios are going to kind of jump in and bail them out. And the government is certainly not going to bail out the movie theaters. So, and if you look at what happened with Warner Brothers sending all their movies to
HBO Max.
HBO Max. So I think that it's a hint that maybe movie theaters or these studios are seeing the future in their own streaming service, right? Where people, even though everyone's cooped up and is just dying for everything to get back to normal, there's still that kind of fear of the pandemic and everything else that's maybe making people say, I'm just going to stay at home. And I think over the past 10 months, people are maybe getting comfortable with staying at home, looking at, their big TV. Most people have a big TV, and it's nice to be able to pause and go to the washroom and not have sticky floors and people talking behind you.
Yeah, but I'm with Jason. Like to me, there's no greater experience of watching it on the big screen with the big sound. Yes, there's a noise of people talking sometimes, but usually if the film's good, you don't have the talking sort of thing. But yeah, that'd be a shame because I'm a big movie person. I love the movies. I love that big screen. Even though you have a big screen at home, I understand it. It's still not the same because it's so easy to be distracted when you're at home.
Right.
And you're at theater, like everything's put away, right? You don't get a text and pause the movie. Like you're in for the ride. You're full bore, and I miss that. I miss it a lot. So I'm hoping things go back to normal whenever that might be. But you're right. Like, will the theater business ever be able to recover after this devastating year for so many different businesses, right? But the thing you got to look at too is if COVID doesn't get under control, the entertainment product is going to slow down too, right? Safety protocols, like you probably see a lot more animated stuff coming out. I'm guessing, right? Because if you can't bring large groups of people together, it's really hard to make a movie or a TV series, right?
Right, and this is another thing that Disney can do, right? Lucasfilm can do. I mean, they're known for their great animation series, right? The Clone Wars, this Bad Batch that's coming, Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Resistance. I mean,
you name it.
It's such a simple way, and the Clone Wars told a great story. They were able to take their time and tell a story. Same with Rebels, that I'm more familiar with. So, I really hope that's not the future. It's just all animation and actors are gone.
Disney's got to really feel like, I mean, they got Disney Plus going right. They
Absolutely.
just kind of got this in like right before. They got to be super relieved in a way that, man, it's a good thing we started, because that streaming service could have easily been, well, we'll do it in 2023 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I wonder, this announcement of all these shows, I mean, I caught a little bit of some, like the Andor show. I know they've been working on for a while, and I'm sure,
planning that for a while.
Right. But I wonder, like, how much of this was like, okay, everybody, when was the last meeting? They said, we're going all in, we're going streaming. We got the 10 shows, and, they have to really feel like we gotta seize this, with the competition between Netflix and Amazon and, everybody else. CBS has got Star Trek and everything. So,
maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't really know what was going to happen. Kind of like The Mandalorian was such a huge thing that I don't think that they realized how great it was going to be to fans, not just for Grogu or anything, but just everything about it. And it kind of piqued, the interest of the fans. And so the executives at Disney and Lucasfilm were like, this is wonderful. We have a hit. But the problem is that a lot of people were getting rid of their subscription until The Mandalorian came back. So the rush was on. It's like, we got to keep people here, not just for 6 weeks, 6 or 10 weeks.
Right.
And so now I'm sure there was a mad rush, but in the media, we weren't really hearing anything, right? We were hearing like this possible person could be directing, this person might be writing, this person, this and that, but there was nothing definite. And I think at that point, they were still thinking, how can we move forward after the sequel with future movies? How can we movies this and movies that? And then they saw this kind of like, well, we can do this now, right? But yes. these projects are going into 2023. So, unless they start announcing in the next year or two, oh, by the way, we're still going to go to theater. I mean, this just seems like this is kind of the way they're going to go.
Yeah. Hence the lack of feature-length movies.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The biggest issue I have with so many on the tables, you have to be careful you don't burn out your audience, right? Like what's great about Star Wars is the fact that it's a big deal when you see it, right? When The Mandalorian comes out, it's a big deal. So now, like, it's possible that you still have the same excitement for everybody. I know I don't have as much excitement for some of the stuff I've seen so far as I did for The Mandalorian, just because The Mandalorian looked like like Boba Fett, right? And so that had that appeal sort of thing, right? Obi-Wan, I'm very, like Jason was, you're asking what you're looking for. I'm looking forward to Obi-Wan just because see Ian McGregor coming back, reprising the role of Obi-Wan's pretty exciting. I just want to see what they're going to do with it, sort of thing, where that storyline is going to go. Even the fact that I believe I read on the Star Wars Reporter this week that Hayden Christensen's coming back
Hayden
too.
Christensen coming back in some
that's
way.
Pretty exciting, right? I know that Jen was pretty excited about those news, right? Her little poster boy from when she was a teenager is back, right? So,
That's right. That's right.
So it's like that's hard not to be excited about that. Like one thing about Hollywood's doing is they bring back old stuff, right? And people get really kind of juiced up about it. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty not that I was a big, huge prequels fan. Again, I'm a fan, but not huge.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see them come back together and see what they're going to do. Right, so that's kind of cool. So I noticed that Lando. I've seen very little about Lando. Is Donald Glover coming back to reprise the role?
Don't know. Doesn't really. It's
really new, is it?
It's really. I mean, what it's saying. Using where does it say? I mean, there's really not a whole lot of news on that. It'd be interesting if Donald Glover would do that. I mean, I don't know what else he's doing right now. Like, I'm not saying he's out of work, but like, what does he have? I know he's got his music and stuff, but
he does a show called Atlanta that's very, very big on. I can't remember what network it is, but it's a very, very popular show he does. It's called Atlanta.
Oh, well, I mean, Lando could be a limited series, anyways, right? Like, I know that Kenobi is.
Well, yeah, that's a good point too. Actually, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, we didn't Lando talk to that one of the girls said, "Let's find a little bit about your background. Is it going to be Billy D. Williams and carry on with old Lando?
Why not? Why not? He could
kind
do
of
that.
hinted it at the end of Rise of Skywalker. We should find out together, right? Sort of thing. So
that's
which I thought was kind of
good point. Yeah,
it's kind of out there when I watched in the movie. Going, okay, that's setting something up that I don't know if anybody's asking for, but maybe that's what it is.
That's a really good catch. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So here's where, according to StarWars.com, that other website, it says that Lando, everyone's favorite scoundrel, Lando Calrissian, will return in a brand new event series for Disney. Justin Simeon, creator of the critically acclaimed Dear White People and a huge Star Wars fan, is developing the story. So that's it. So what they're doing is that this just seems kind of like an idea, and they've never really touched on it. I mean, Todd, you would know more than us. I mean, the process. People just think, okay, they've announced the movie, now they're going to make it. But it's like for these big Hollywood movies, it's like a 2-year process to even get there, right? Like,
my guess, some executives sat down with some people, some creative people. Okay, let's pitch 10 series we can get going, right? So I'm just guessing what this is like, and they're just pitching all these ideas out there. Let's work with that's my guess, and something stuck. My guess, it's obviously there's somebody attached to it, or maybe this person pitched the idea. It's tough to say, really, right? But obviously, they looked at their products, their characters, and which ones can they spin off of that have a fan following already, right? Like Lando brings something to it, right? Really, we know very little about Lando. Right, he's in Empire Strikes Back for not even half the movie, and then he was in Return of the Jedi. Really, other than that, we don't know much about him.
Right, and they tried to kind of develop the character with Solo, right? Having Donald Glover play him and stuff like that. But I mean, and I kind of like, if you look at the logo, it's fair. You know what that look feels like to me? Feels like 70s, 80s disco. Which is Lando style.
It is a throwback logo for sure.
It is totally Lando style, right?
Especially from the Solo movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
he's very pimpish like too. You know what I'm saying? Like, not that he's a pimp, but he kind of had the mannerism sort of thing, and cloak, and just
the cloak.
It's a bad analogy.
Says it. Do you know the one thing I've been really looking forward to the series since it was announced way before then that they were going to develop it, and they had a different name for it, was the Cassian. Well, it's Andor, but it was before they announced the Cassian Andor series, and I always thought he was in Rogue One, and to me he was one of the most, if you had to choose a character that could have his own spin-off, to me it was Cassian. And I know a lot of people would say I forget their name. The blind monk and stuff, that they would have a great series, or
it was Sheeran?
Of that kind of stuff. Yeah, but I just think that Cassian, what did it for me is in the scene where you first see Cassian and he's meeting with his informant, and the stormtroopers come upon him, and he ends up killing the stormtroopers and his informant to cover his tracks, because he's a spy. He's ruthless. He does what he needs to do, right? And I remember seeing that in the theater, thinking, "Ooh, wow, this is really different for Star Wars. I like this guy."
That was a great,
so different.
Yeah,
and I always thought that leading up to that point, he probably did some pretty crazy things, and then of course in Rogue One he lightens up and helps Jin and all this kind of stuff and becomes a different person, right? But before that, he was like a rebel spy, that it'd be interesting to find out how he got his the Imperial droid. I forget the name. So I'm really looking forward to that. Like Kenobi is going to be awesome because of McGregor and seeing Hayden Christensen again, but they could probably do a lot. And with the sizzle reel that they showed and posted, Diego Luna, I love actors who you could see that they're excited to do the role and it's not a paycheck. It's like, speaking of The Mandalorian, Bill Burr, awesome job in both episodes he's been in. But I remember seeing him on Conan when he did the first episode, and they're like, "Oh, you're in The Mandalorian." He's like, "Yeah, it's nerd stuff. I'm not really into like the sci-fi and the Star Wars stuff, but it was fun." And it's like, I hate that, right? But
don't do that. No, don't say that.
So I mean, maybe he's just doing his act because Bill Burr is kind of a angry, rough comedian.
Yeah,
but Diego Luna, he's excited. He's like as if one of us had our own series and they're like, talk to us about what you're doing. We'd be like, "Yee." That's what it felt like. So I like actors that are invested in these projects because we are, right? We're big nerds. And
well, you're always gonna, as a person who makes films and stuff like that, someone who's invested into it will go the extra mile. There's some like, again, there's incredible talent out there, like what's his name? The guy from Fight Club, Edward Norton, right? Like,
right.
He's a guy who doesn't, sometimes he does projects he absolutely hates, but the performance is still pretty good. But it's the behavior behind the scenes and stuff like that, right? But, somebody who's invested in something and really, really, really wants it to be the best it possibly can do are going to go the extra mile to make sure it works, right? And
right.
That's what you want as a fan who wants to watch something to be good. Like in any Marvel movie, like I want the people to be invested in it, not just like you're saying for a paycheck, right? You want them to believe, you want them to go far, you want them to be invested into the project and for future projects too, right?
Right.
Like you hear stuff, you hear lots about the cast from the latest trilogy from Star Wars, right? A lot of the people are just like, they didn't sound like they're too crazy about being part of the Star Wars saga, right? So,
right.
Which I find a little bit discouraging, sort of thing.
So, what do you guys think of the Rangers of the New Republic, which the description is set within the timeline of The Mandalorian, this new live-action series from producers Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, will intersect with future stories and culminate into a climactic story event. And it kind of...
Oh, go ahead, Steve. I was just going to say, I had a couple thoughts on that one specifically. I felt like I could picture what Todd was saying exactly, which I agree 100%, Todd, exactly how you said that. With Disney got together and said, all right, when the pandemic and the streaming and all this stuff, and they sat around and said, how do we take advantage of this? What do we do here? What do we offer up? And some of these titles, probably they may not know too much beyond the vague description we're reading. Now, that may not be true, but I mean, you almost feel like that. That's a show that I feel like it could be either way. Like it's almost like on the one hand that feels like, let's keep the success of The Mandalorian going by simply hooking us by saying taking place in the Mandalorian timeline.
Right.
Or, it very well could be their plan to siphon off what we've been talking about the last few weeks, and where I believe strongly that The Mandalorian is setting up a much larger scale story or show or movies, which entail
a universe. Basically, what
Right.
they're doing, like the Marvel universe. That's when we talked about this before. I agree with you, Jason. Yeah,
Right. Like
it's being called the Filoniverse.
Right. It's a little odd to me that it would be the Rangers of the New Republic, which is almost throws it off a little because that almost suggests because that sounds like an offshoot in itself, like these guys that are zipping are almost Mandalorian-ish, like character or something. But
it almost sounds like this thing we talked about.
Yes,
my idea, except I'm sure they had theirs first, but
something like that, yeah.
Or maybe they just copied me.
But something's going to happen.
They saw the podcast, Steve. They saw the podcast. They ripped the idea from you, and they're not going to pay you anything for the idea.
Well, either way, hello, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Thanks for joining us.
We love your work, by the way. You're looking for an extra in the background, Steve did.
I think they have. If you look at the 10, they have a good mixture of different kinds of things, like Rogue Squadron, or the Rangers could be kind of like a Rogue One, right? More kind of like a war movie story. Lando is probably I could see that being more fun and comical, like Donald Glover was in Solo.
Which would be nice. It'd be nice to have a different kind of feel for all the different series, right? Like, I think a fun one would be really good to have.
Yeah, it's true. What do you guys think of the droid story? This thing here, and the description, it just reminds me of that cartoon back in the day, A Droid's Adventure, right?
It's called Droid's Adventure? I thought it was just called Droids.
It was called Droid Adventures. But here, A Droid Story, it says that they're developing intersecting animation and visual effects, opportunity to explore. Basically, it says A Droid Story. The epic journey will introduce us to new hero guided by the legendary duo R2-D2 and C-3PO. Now, in Droids, the cartoon back in the late 80s, R2-D2 and C-3PO would come across this random person in the Star Wars universe and end up hooking up with them, like joining them on whatever they were doing. And one guy was like a prospector, and one guy was like he was a speeder racer, and it was just, this sounds like that story, which I'm fine with. It just seems kind of funny. Like some executive watched it recently and said that would be good if we did an updated version.
They could be, thinking for the little kids too. Some of this stuff's got to go for the young, the super young.
Well, I think the little kids enjoy C-3PO more than maybe the adults do, because I find C-3PO is the Jar Jar Binks of the series. I find I liked him in the original trilogy, but every other trilogy afterwards, I find him annoying, and I really wish that he blew up something in the end and sacrificed his life for the greater good. He could have became a hero instead of just being annoying all the time. Even the characters don't like him.
I was hoping that he wasn't going to die, because that was the rumor. It's like C-3PO was going to die. I thought to have C-3PO and R2-D2, it would be great to have them in future projects in the background only, like even on TV, like Mandalorian. It'd be great if they were on, say, whatever world in a city, and while Mando's talking to someone, way in the background is R2-D2 and C-3PO just walking by. You know what I mean? Like just kind of cameos in all these places. Like they would be like the Stan Lee, but of the Star Wars universe, right?
They are the storytellers. R2 is the storyteller. So C-3PO, really actually.
So of course, probably a lot of people are really going crazy about is the no-brainer here, Ahsoka series, right? Which it was the rumor that everyone knew about, right? Rosario Dawson. And I read some rumor thing. It's like one of these rumors that said that they might use Ahsoka to rewrite or eliminate the sequel series in some way. Like that these series anyways, and even The Mandalorian, there's certain things being written that are either going along with the sequel or erasing parts of the sequel trilogy. So it's, if people hated the sequels so much, it's a good opportunity for them to kind of make people forget by
I can't even imagine, like, maybe, I don't know, this today, the way things are today. And I don't know. I guess, I mean, again, what they're doing with the Mandalorian, the Empire influence just bigger and bigger in the show. And it's like, they're creating that big enemy again. And, and I'm so curious. That's the one thing with all these shows. It's cool to me. They're all kind of side. I really wonder. I've always focused on the bigger sagas personally. That's what I've always been into, the larger stuff. And I can't help but just wonder on a lot of the stuff. Okay, I just think, who else is coming in to each of these shows? Where is it going on the main larger level? And I'm very curious to see how the Empire thread is going to play out in the Mandalorian, because you're going to start running out of time where it's going to intersect into the First Order. And, that's going to have to be accounted for eventually.
Yeah, right. You're absolutely correct. Like, they're almost writing themselves into an issue with that, right? Where I don't know how they can do it without screwing something up, right? Like the whole, the prequels, the Anakin built C-3PO, but then later on has no idea who he is. It just, little things like that. Doesn't recognize R2, and just weird.
They've got time, they've got the 15-year, no, I'm sorry, it would be longer than that. Actually, they do have time with the Empire First Order thing. I mean, there are some decades, but it is something.
But the First Order's around. They didn't appear right before Force Awakens, right? They had time to establish themselves for a while because they were a bit of a threat, right? So, I'm not a writer, so I'm sure they'll figure it out. But even the changing from the Empire to the First Order, because you'd think the Empire would be dead, but they're talking about bringing back the Empire in Mandalorian. When do they make that switch to the First Order?
Right, that's stuff that I wonder about.
Right.
But again, like Steve, like you're saying, maybe there's going to be very subtle about it and just maybe not talk about the newest trilogy and just write themselves out of it. Right? If the storyline's good,
it'd be interesting.
If storyline's good, people just they probably won't want to announce it if they're going to do it. I think they're just trying to slide in and just kind of try to be sneaky about it, sort of thing. If that's their plan.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. And they could do it with the time, because actually, it's like, what is it? It's 30, 35 years from Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens. So that's a lot of time. They could play out, everything could just play out and resolve, however, and then 10 years later, the First Order arose from the ashes of the Empire. So they don't really have to deal with it almost. Yeah.
Because somewhere along the line, the Empire has to lose again to become the First Order. I imagine, right? So, but I'm along for the ride, and I'm. As for the droids, I remember watching as a kid. It was a hard one to watch because always later in the day, right, Steve? The droid cartoon show is always later in the day. Yeah, I know I played hockey lots, right? So I'd miss it sometimes, but I remember not being a huge. I preferred the Ewok show over. They used to have the Star Wars Hour, right?
It was like Star Wars Hours. Yeah.
And I watched the Ewoks more because I didn't miss it as much as the droids. But I was always missing Chewbacca and stuff. Like, it was just them. Like, so, I guess it was before A New Hope when they didn't have a master, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. It was before they had a master, or like A New Hope, right? When it became Luke's. But when they first announced kind of a cartoon coming out, I remember it being announced that they were going to have new adventures or something with the original cast, like Han, Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, and all this kind of stuff, right, in animated form. So when it came out, droids and Ewoks, and it was more like the Ewoks were for sure maybe directed more younger.
Oh, absolutely.
Although I loved Endor and kind of how they expanded on the story, which developed toys even from it and canon, but the droids was just an interesting concept to me because you got to see different parts of the universe, right? Just like normal people trying to make a living in the universe, and still, like different parts of the Empire would show up here and there. So it was really good.
I'd have to see it again for sure, but
yeah, look it up. This other thing, the few that I'm really, really interested in, this is one of them. It's not Star Wars related, but it's got a Star Wars alum in it. It's Willow.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
I'm so embarrassed. I've never seen it.
Ah, yeah, you got to see Willow.
Like,
Wow.
okay, when it came out, Steve, you would know 'cause we were friends back then. When it came out, I was big into the horror genre, so
Yeah, that's true.
I wasn't giving a lot of other genres a chance. Really, it even took me forever to. I fought watching Die Hard forever because
Oh wow.
I was like, all guns is too easy. I was like, I was more into the special effects and the makeup of the horror genre. But then of course I watched Die Hard one day. I was like, oh, this is really really good. So so Willow's one of those casualties of my horror genre back then, where I was only watching horror movies. So I have not. I've just never got to it. I guess I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. I should probably watch it.
It's
Yes,
there.
and it overlooked the kind of iffy special effects, but
It doesn't stand the test of time, does it?
I like the characters.
It's watchable. It's cool. It's at once like obviously, like at the peak of the '80s special effects, but it doesn't. It's definitely cool though. It's cool. No, it's not 2020 level, but you can see that a lot of care was put into it. It's cool. It doesn't. I don't think the movie really suffers so much because of time. To a younger person, it would, but to somebody who grew up with that, even though you haven't seen it, I think you'd enjoy it. It's beautifully done, actually.
Maybe I'll watch it and I'll try and convince my wife to watch it with me, because I'm pretty sure she hasn't seen it either. I can honestly say I've never even seen 5 minutes of the movie. Not even 5 minutes of the movie.
Wow.
It's on
It's
TV.
a family-friendly kind of.
Yeah.
It's like when you don't have to be. You wouldn't even have to necessarily be a huge like fantasy or sci-fi fan. Like Willow's pretty entertaining anyway.
It's a Ron Howard film, and Ron Howard always, to me, I think he's a very even his bad movies are usually still really good. Not that he has bad movies, but some movies haven't been great that he's put out, but they're always technically very solid, and that's why I appreciate you as being a filmmaker myself. Is I love to watch technically solid films, and I can honestly say that I've never been opposed to. I mean, I like them as much, but they're still easy to consume, to watch.
Right.
I really love the fact that they could have went a different route and not had Warwick Davis come back to play Willow Ufgood. But they're doing that again. I think they're hitting off of a lot of the titles. I think they're like, this is what people want to see, right? And they're really like, okay, we really have to start making some cash here and bringing some people in. But nostalgia, and nostalgia. I read somewhere, there was an article that came out. Nostalgia is good for people's mental health. As much as people say, oh, it's nostalgia, that you're only into it because of this, it really makes people feel good. So
I'm a sucker for it. I have no problem with nostalgia, like something being nostalgic. With this stuff in particular, Willow, Star Wars, it works for me. It tugs the old, emotional, the heartstrings.
When you're in the theater and you watch Force Awakens, you saw the Millennium Falcon come from underneath the blanket. Tell me, can you remember the right away? Oh, that's just a piece of garbage, right? Her ship blows up, and all of a sudden it's. And who didn't lose their lunch, right? Like everyone was fanboying out because it hit that. And then they fire it up and it goes and of course with the 2016 special effects, like it looked like that Millennium Falcon first takeoff and Rey's flying it, and those TIE fighters was chasing it, was amazing, right? And it hit everybody. And everybody left that theater feeling like they were 5 years old again. It felt like when I walked out of Force Awakens, I just felt like I watched The New Hope, maybe because it's so similar in storyline. But that didn't bother me at all. I felt like I was 5 years old again. I was so entertained, and it just opened my eyes again, and it just felt fresh, and just felt, although it wasn't, but just seeing stormtroopers again, just seeing TIE fighters, X-wing fighters. It was amazing. The shot when they're going. Remember when the Han and Chewie and Finn were all stuck in all those. The X-wings are coming across the lake, right? Just like how amazing that felt, right? And so that's nostalgia, right? That's what we all fanboyed out. And I think, like you're saying, Steve, there's tons of. I've heard so many people say how good Willow is. I'm just not. I was never big the fantasy and sword sort of thing. I'm still not a big. Lord of the Rings did really really well. Hobbit didn't like it as much. and so I'm not big on that genre sort of stuff, right? Like I know you were big into Vikings and sword. I like blasters and guns and stuff like that. But that's just, again, that's why there's so many different genres. We all attach to it. But again, I think like you're saying, having Warwick Davis come back, there's gonna be so many people psyched for it.
Right.
Yeah, he's really identified with that character.
Yeah, really excited about that. I don't know if you guys want to jump into the Mandalorian chapter 15 right now, but some really interesting things happened in it. I'm not gonna say it's I meant
like coming off of 2 amazing episodes. Like you like it starts off really slow, but when they got the whole, well, you lead the thing. I don't know why, but this one really built up so nicely. I thought, like it kind of went down a gear from where it was last 2 episodes. But again, the way the story progressed, it's just, and how intense that whole scene was inside the big transporter they're driving. Right, I thought it was, and then it built up so nicely, and it just visually, it was like, wow. I don't know what to say, but wow, and it was so intense. So intense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the story is, right, in order to find the location of Gideon, they need Mayfeld again. So, and he was the Bill Burr, the actor. It was his character. And so Cara Dune and Mando and Boba Fett and Fennec all go get Bill Burr's character. He's kind of like in a junkyard, like a prison junkyard, breaking scrap. It was really cool. All the broken ATs, ATSTs, TIE fighters, which is really cool.
The crane? The cranes are made from AT-ATs?
That's what,
the leg that was like, oh. I was watching a Looper thing. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And, instantly, Bill Burr's character of Mayfeld in the previous episode, man, he was like that psycho intense guy that you didn't know what he was going to do from moment to moment. And here, I mean, maybe being in like a prison camp in the Star Wars universe changes you quick, but he just seemed a lot lighter, more funny, which was fine. But it was, and Boba Fett painted his armor. That was a big thing.
Eh?
Yeah,
some people are really angry about that. They're like, why did he paint it? It's too new and blah, blah, blah. It's like his armor was absolutely destroyed. Like the paint was wrecked. What was he going to do?
Well, I've seen some of these posting. I think maybe on Star Wars Reporter about how some fan people are upset that it's all painted new, like because the trilogy it wasn't. But this is the new Boba Fett. Like like it's been years without it, so maybe it's a fresh start for him. He's redefining himself. He's starting over. So to me, it made perfect sense. Really, like why wouldn't I? It's been years. I got it back. Let's start new.
Well, he cleaned it up, and I like the black instead of the gray underneath.
Mm-hmm.
I like the whole look. The whole thing is amazing.
He looked killer, and I thought exactly that, Todd. I'm like, he's had his pride's been hurt. He was all mangled in the Sarlacc. He's been the gangly piece of crap, for so long.
Too, right? Like he's got to be prideful, right? Reputation. He looks bad.
He's older and everything, and like now he's got a chance with his armor to be like sharp and killer again. So it's something he may never say or whatever, but I totally took it as exactly that. And I wanted to say about this episode, and this also kind of going off how you were expressing before, Todd, with how it went on and it kind of got deeper as things went on. This show has been. It's been so cool, and it's been kind of like a punch in the face right away. You see the show, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of stuff coming at you, and there's that character and this and that. And whereas this episode, was like slightly, well, obviously not midway through, but in some ways toned down a little bit for some of it from the previous 2, with like the big reveals or whatever. But, when I watched this episode again, it really struck me as I'm like, this one was one of the best ones for a couple reasons. Number one, the writing and like the dialogue in this one was really, really good. That dude who directed it. And the performances, Bill Burr in particular,
Oh
were
man.
really, really, really good in this one.
Absolutely.
And Bill Burr was fantastic in this. I thought he was better in this one than in the first season. There was more depth to his character. He was like witty, but it wasn't totally over the top witty. He actually said like a lot of like pretty intense things and talking about the Mandalorian, like with his helmet on or off. And then the scene,
which was totally foreshadowing. If you think about it
absolutely.
now, what
Right,
Bill
of
Burr's
course.
character did, they had
Yeah.
his character set up what was going to happen. So people
Right.
were like, "What? Oh, right. I see what they're doing."
And when they were in, yeah, absolutely. And when they went into, the officers area, and when he had that, which, well, all three of us will talk about, he had that epic talk with Voss, that officer he had in Operation Cinder and all that. He was amazing. Bill Burr was really, really good in this. And then Pedro, dude, like just to see, the helmet off and he looked out of sorts, and there was a lot of, I just thought, great performances in this one.
And that's where it got super. I thought it was so super intense. Just the mask is off, and then the guy, the leader, whatever his name is, sorry, the general, the guy in command confronts him, right?
Yeah.
And then the Bill Burr guy jumps in like, oh man, I thought it was so intense. Even though there wasn't a lot of dialogue, even the sitting down, it just felt like a Quentin Tarantino scene. Like
I was going to say that sounds
tension.
that whole thing was that what was that one where they had to sneak in? Was it Inglourious Bastards? The scene in the bar when they were all talking.
That was fantastic.
That's what it felt like, tense like that.
Right. That's what I thought. It was even the writing, like they're talking about something that nobody knows about. At the same time, it was so intense, and you could feel the tension coming up in the Bill Burr character, right? Like, and you knew that outcome was going to happen. Like you could tell by how he's speaking so passionately about the people that died. Like I was going, oh man, this is going to end very, very bad for everybody here in this room, and sure enough, it did. Right? It was so good, and
they really put a face on the stormtroopers in this episode. I think, like, not just because of Bill Burr's character, right? He was a stormtrooper. He was more of
he saved the day.
He was, but just what I thought was really cool was, okay, so when they make it with their, with the shipment, and they pull into that bay, and all the different stormtroopers are there, and I love the stormtroopers. What were they called from Rogue One? Anyways,
shock troopers.
And they're all saluting as they're coming in. But when they roll in and all the stormtroopers are there, you never see this in Star Wars movies. They're all like cheering, like, "Yeah, we did it! Victory! You got the shipment to us." That felt like the rebels, just the other side.
That's exactly what I thought.
It was very cool.
You never see it from the bad guy's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like when they blew up Alderaan, right? In New Hope, they're probably the stormtroopers, yeah, like look what we did, right? Yeah,
they probably were.
Look how big our unit is, right? They're all, right. They're just like having a great old time. Why wouldn't they? They've achieved their goal. You never see it from that perspective. It was a neat looking behind the curtain sort of thing. It was
it's like when Luke blew up the Death Star and it come back and everyone's cheering and they're patting him on the shoulder. That's what they were doing to these guys, right? For getting the shipment there. And I thought it was really cool. And I'm not a stormtrooper guy, right? Sorry, 501st, but I just thought it was really cool. And I remember saying that to my wife when I watched it with her the second time. And it's really cool because I don't know if you remember when the first time Mayfell was there, right, with that gang of really creepy people, and you remember after that scene where he like pretends to drop Baby Yoda, Grogu, and she turns to me and goes, "They all have to die." After this episode, and she didn't realize that Bill Burr was a comedian. She thought he was just a solid actor, and she turns to me and says, "Okay, I really like him. I really like him. He was like the best part of this show," and it was so great. His whole character was redeemed, and you got a really good look at the PTSD of stormtroopers, right? Because the commanders were just in this Operation Cinder. It didn't matter if 10,000 stormtroopers died, right? I think that's what the number was, like 10,000 people died.
10,000, 5,000. It was a lot.
It was a lot. It was like, I think that's what he said. It was like 10,000 people died. He goes, "Oh, but they were heroes." And he's like, "Really? Were they heroes, or were they just killed?"
And the family, and he brought the family into the whole thing, right? So, like, obviously, stormtroopers have a family.
Yeah.
You know,
by the way, actually, that Operation Cinder is like kind of it was the basis for. I think it was in some comics too, but the game Battlefront 2.
Right.
The main story was actually based off of Operation Cinder, and it was like Palpatine's orders, if he was destroyed and the Empire was destroyed, that Operation Cinder would happen, and it would like annihilate a whole bunch of planets and turn people even against like the rebellion, the Republic, and all that. So it was like a contingency plan from the Empire to screw things up and maybe set up the Empire's continuation. So it was, and exactly what you guys are saying. Like Bill Bird's character in that whole scene, like that was some heavyweight drama. Like that was some really good stuff, and he played it really well. I was very, very impressed with him in this episode.
And when he shot that commander, his old commander, that actually, I knew it was getting tense, but that actually surprised me.
Yeah,
really? That happened. She's like, "What? Why?"
No, I knew there was no other solution. Sorry, I knew there was no other possibility but that happened. I said that earlier. I said, like, to me, it was building up. He's going to shoot this guy. He's going to shoot him dead. And that's what I was saying. Like, and it's going to be really, really bad for our two characters here. And that's exactly what. Like, I knew there was, when it got building up, I knew there was no other out but that.
The Mandalorian's face was priceless when that happened. He was like,
I know.
Paused for a split second after he shot him.
Because everybody's
everyone in the room did
that, and that's it. Because like, no one expects it, right? Also, this happened, and everyone's like,
"It was great.
Did that just happen?"
Like all the stormtroopers were like, "What?
What? Like that? That's I think everybody was in shock. It's like when somebody gets hit by a car in the street, everybody's like,
right.
"Oh, we should go help." And that's exactly what happened, right? They're all like, and then sudden, unfortunately, the good guys. Took action first. Yeah, I was still in shock because again, they're probably looking, going, "Why is a stormtrooper shooting our commander?" Like,
I know,
without, like there must be something. What? And it was so good. It was so good.
Do you know?
Of course, they're escaping the building was so great. They're trying to get out, and all the stormtroopers and the snipers were picking them off.
That was cool.
It was so good.
So good. Even this again was kind of. To date, with one episode to go, the peak of progression of the character of the Mandalorian, of Mando, because we first see him ruthless bounty hunter, right? And as time progresses, his beliefs are challenged, whether it be Bo-Katan or just his love for Grogu, kind of like a father-son, to now, just like Mayfeld, Bill Burr's character, foreshadowed, right? I just remember that line where he's like, he's making the joke. It's like, so, like, if, people will have their line and they'll cross it when things get messy. And he's like, look at you, right? You're in a stormtrooper armor. So what's the rule? What's your belief? Is it that you don't take the Mando helmet off, or we don't see your face? And he says, we're all the same. We have our beliefs, but when things get messy, things change. And that's what Mando was doing this whole time, right? It's like, Grogu, if we don't do this, we're going to lose him forever. Okay, I'll put the stormtrooper on. Okay, they get there. The terminal is where this commander is that Bill Burr thinks he's going to recognize him. So he's like, it's over. We can't do anything, because we got to scan the face. And he's like, give me the memory stick. And he goes and he takes the helmet off.
The look of his face too when he takes it off was so like, and he's not doing it. It just looks so intense. Like he's so uncomfortable, but he's doing it for a reason. He's doing it for the greater good, for it, like for love. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and my whole feeling was, okay, he took it off, but he's in that corner, and I thought, okay, are they going to do the whole? He gets away with it because no one can see him, right? No one can see his face. So But when that commander came over and he turns to him and he had that look like, damn, on his face,
oh,
I was
man.
like, it's over. It's over. What's going to happen?
I have a question.
I wish he would. Sorry, my problem that I felt with that in after when he had the helmet on and you look like a lost puppy after that for the most part. I wish, and I wish that when he had to take the helmet off, or when he talked to that commander when he came over him, he had like a Clint Eastwood scowl, like he was just like angry. Takes the helmet off and he's angry. He was more of a angry or serious than lost puppy. I just wish that was the Mando.
I didn't feel like he was a lost puppy. I just felt like he was like everything he's believed in was being thrown out the door because he's doing it for, like, he's sacrificing something, and so he was sacrificing his way for this child, which maybe he doesn't fully understand.
Right.
What's compelling him to do such a thing? Because that's not the way, right? The whole slogan is "This is the way," and now he's doing everything that's not the way, and that's why I saw conflict, turmoil, just definitely. Fighting every instinct he had. So to me, it wouldn't be angry. It's like when he got caught, and he's like, to me, he's like, oh crap, he can see my face. He doesn't know who I am, but he can still see my face, and that's what it's just that inner turmoil of just that fact alone. I didn't feel like a lost puppy sort of thing, but I see what you're saying about the lost puppy thing. But I just don't think he knew what to say. Because again, I don't have my mask on. I don't even feel comfortable talking right now because I don't have this isn't me, right? Sort of thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my take on it. But again, I just thought as soon as that officer came to talk to him, like we were just how everything exponentially got way worse.
Yeah.
My one question, and it's not a big, like everything you said, I agree with 100%, Todd. And that's the big point of like that whole scene. So what I'm wondering is not even on that level, but when he went, I thought that Ben Bird was Mayfield. His name's Mayfield, right? Is it Mayfield?
Mayfeld or something?
Yeah.
So, I thought he had to go to that terminal specifically because like his face is in like the Imperial registry or whatever. So that was one thing I was curious about, was the Mandalorian, like, wasn't that thing identifying people? Wouldn't it have identified him as like not an Imperial? I was like, how is he getting away with that without like intruder alert or something?
That's a good question. I did think that too, but I guess I was just then the scene got so intense I didn't care anymore. I guess.
Yeah, no, it's not right. It's not a big deal, really. It's like a technical nitpick kind of question.
Maybe just knew it wasn't a rebel type registered type person.
Because when when he first went up to the terminal, I thought some of his look, I mean, of course, like you said, Todd, but some of it I thought he was like, oh man, I don't think this is going to work. I thought that thing was going to go off like an alarm.
Yeah,
right.
I identified him as an intruder.
But it was really interesting what Bill Burr says, right? Like once everyone's shot in the room, he's like picks up his helmet and says, "You did the right thing. I didn't see your face," or something like that. Yeah. And then he grabs it and it's like a relief and he puts it on. And again, here's that progression. Here's that when things become a mess, what will you do? What will you cross the line of your belief? And here it is, because technically, this is not the way. As soon as the helmet comes off, you can never put it back on, or any helmet, I guess. And see, he's willing to put it on. And I thought that Mayfeld was going to die because he saw his face. He was the only other person alive in that room that saw him.
I'm surprised he didn't do.
But I'm really glad that he ended up living. One thing I'll say about the show is when they announced that Boba Fett was going to be in the show and then he ended up being in the show and it wasn't a rumor, I thought initially, if they bring Boba Fett in that show, it's over for Mando. It's done. Like he's going to completely dominate that show. But in this episode, he was a taxi service. Mm-hmm. You saw him 2 times maybe. He was like the beginning and then the end. Okay, I'll come pick you up. And so they're really playing it smart where they're not letting epic characters overshadow the main characters of this show.
And nothing is too no Grogu that whole entire episode, right?
Yes.
Right,
Not
right.
once. So and again, you don't need Baby Yoda to have a good episode, right? He was not featured at all, and it was still a very engaging show.
Right. But what's interesting, the Baby Yoda was driving the Mandalorian's whole. He did all that. He went through all that
Right.
with the revealing his face, for him. So even though he wasn't in the episode, he was driving the Mandalorian to go through all of that and question, and go through the kind of breaking the principles and all that.
And of course the ending of this episode alone, that just a little hologram to him was like,
Yep.
like holy. I think what's his name?
Gideon.
Gideon. I'm sure he crapped his pants because that was such, like I posted on our Facebook chat. Whoa, he had his big boy voice on, right? Like Mandalorian was pretty serious there.
He was pretty serious.
Very
and that's what it
intimidating.
felt like. What you were saying, it was almost like Taken, right? It's like,
Yeah,
I have very specific skills.
And also, you guys said the main. So did he actually use the exact same wording that?
The exact same wording Gideon used the first time he met them.
So good,
right? With how much it means to him. Yeah,
I saw a meme. I wish I would have shared it here, where it had Gideon listening and he's saying the same thing, and down below the hologram was holding the Uno, where it's like a reverse.
Yeah. It was so like I didn't know that was a word for word, but I know it sounded very familiar. But whether I knew it or not. Again, the delivery, and you can't see the face. You can't see his face with the helmet on, but man, was that a serious tone he had in his voice?
Yeah,
like he's not kidding around. Where even like Gideon's face was like, "Oh no, this is not good." He looked
the first time we saw Gideon like that, I think, right, where he's actually like, "Oh, we've never seen him." I don't think where Gideon's like, "Oh man."
He always looks like he's in control. Like he doesn't look worried, doesn't look panicked. But his eyes said a lot. I thought in the last shot, just when it came into his face, it wasn't like, "Bring it on, boy." It was like, "Oh no."
Yep, he was intimidated.
Exactly. He's at least got to be thinking to himself that because he's probably still in a way thinking, I'm on this big Star Destroyer. I am part of this big, unit. But he has to be thinking, like, how is this guy doing this? Like,
right.
I think he's a little more trouble than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. So, he probably thought he was nothing. And all of a sudden, how this guy get in touch with me, send me a direct message. He just DM'd me. How to get my information, right? Right? Like, it's like, and now, what's next episode? You gotta imagine we're gonna see Slave One going at this big, huge Star Destroyer, aren't we? Like,
right.
Just how awesome would that be?
And I'd love to see. I'll say it again. I want to see more of Mayfeld. I don't know if Bill Burr wants to do any more. I mean, it's paycheck, but he was such a great character. Like I said, my wife, who wanted him dead, turned to me and it's like, "Oh, he's great." Well, he did a great job.
It's a possibility because they left him on the planet, but at the same time, they did have a really defining story arc for him too, right?
Mm-hmm.
A redemption arc sort of thing. So if we never see him again, he had a finish, a finale sort of thing where he's kind of, his whole problem was kind of resolved sort of thing.
I forget what he said he was. He wasn't like a regular stormtrooper. He was like a specialist or something, wasn't he? He was like a
sniper guy, wasn't he?
Well, he had that skill, but he was like a specialist, which could be like sharpshooter, because Fennec was like a sharpshooter, and Carrick Dune.
I have to watch again. Yeah. I thought it was something really minimal even. That's when he was talking to the officer. He said his role was like a really minuscule kind of role, like a transporter or something. Yeah.
Yeah, he was trying to downplay it all. But it was so interesting, the TK talk, like what's your
TK number?
But he didn't say that. I forget what's your designation or something like that. And he didn't understand. He was asking for a TK number.
He's
and that whole awkward scene.
The cargo pilot, or he just said something like generic.
Brown eyes.
Brown eyes.
Brown eyes. Hey, at least the Mandalorian doesn't take his helmet off ever, but he was sure. He made sure that he had that really trendy mustache with the, I don't know what you call that. So at least he's taking care of some things, right? Instead of just having all shaved or
like Wookiee Steve.
Oh, it'd be great. Hey, if I ever did that, Mando, I just braid it all so it would hang out at the bottom of the helmet.
There you go. Right, that'll look good. That's intimidating.
Or you just think it's a hobo that grabbed the helmet and put it on.
All I know is I'm excited about Friday coming up. It's because I don't know how
are they going to end it?
There's going to be a lot left for season 3, man.
There's so much going on.
Season 1, when season 1 ended, it wasn't really a big, huge cliffhanger. Take him to his own, right? So it had the season had a resolve, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
This, I don't know how they're going to resolve in one episode. I do not know.
I have to look. I didn't look at the time, but I'm wondering if they're going to do like a 2-hour thing, because they can't do another 39-minute thing for the end of this season. You got to be kidding me. Even 45 minutes can't be enough.
Oh, one thing I want to say before we're getting close to the end here, guys, is actually another. I think Disney Plus stole another idea from you guys. We were talking about essential, the Jedi, the new series coming out, Ahsoka.
Right.
You're talking about episodes for Ahsoka, the most important ones. Well, Disney Plus actually has, if you look on the Clone Wars, essential Ahsoka episodes.
All right.
All Clone Wars and Rebels. So they actually have a categorized of essential Ahsoka episodes that you can follow, so you don't have to watch them all. If you just want to learn about her, they have it already. They already made a playlist for it on Disney Plus. I saw it the other day.
Cool. And you can Google, and people have playlists too for a lot of targeted subjects in the Clone Wars.
Well, I still like to think they stole it from us.
Oh, well, I'm absolutely. We've become a database.
Before we
we're ID generators, exactly.
I just wanted to point this out. There was a fan film that I featured on the site. Here's a clip of these two, and it's called Tales from the 501st Checkpoint. And it kind of had the feel of those two scout troopers from season 1 of The Mandalorian. I forget their name, the one SNL guy, where they're punching Baby Yoda.
That was great.
But it was executed so well. It was so funny. And people need to check that out. Go to the site, to StarWarsReporter.com. We have it featured there. And it's from a film group called Transmute Pictures. They did Bucketheads. And I had an interview with the director. It was like a year ago or something for that. Actually, there was a couple of interviews that we did. And I really laughed at some of the stuff in this video.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I preferred Troops. I thought Troops was better, but this was still really good.
Right.
I don't know if have you seen Troops, Jason?
I have.
I really like that. They make it look like cops, right?
So well done, because I used to watch Cops a lot, if I was just chilling out or nothing else is on or whatever. So I really appreciated Troops. That was hysterical.
Yeah, but this, like you're saying, Steve, this was very, very well done too. I like the Jawas in the background a couple times, right? That's some good stuff, right? So,
or I just like that line where they're making fun of I forget what his name is, the doctor guy from A New Hope in the bar.
The
other guy was
Dr.
He was making some dumb joke, and the guy turns to me and goes, "You're a representative of the Empire. Have a little self-respect, man." I just like that line. It was so stupid.
Yeah, it was good. It was really, really good.
Really good. All right, so I think we've come to the end of it here, guys.
Good stuff.
I mean, really, it's all come down to chapter 16, and I just don't know how they're going to do it, man. 2 hours, 3 hours, just to keep us calm for almost a year until season 3.
Fathom that. Yep.
A year and a plus, right? Because it's not going to start till December. You said? Is that what I saw?
I think it said December 2021.
Yeah, so it's going to be. Well, again, I'm pretty sure COVID has lots to do with it.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
It's going to slow down production hugely. But yeah, it's a worthy wait. Hopefully, Disney Plus has some other stuff coming down soon. It looks like the Bad Batch looks like it's animated, right? So I imagine that'll be coming out shortly, because they look like they have a pretty in-depth trailer, right? So I watched. Yep. So they got to be close to releasing that soon, I'm sure. Again, I'm sure they want to staircase everything separately, sort of thing. I'm sure Ben Kenobi's already started shooting, hasn't it? It's like late in the production, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure where it's at.
I know they're shooting in Boston. They started shooting in Boston.
Yeah,
I thought they had a production going before that too. I thought
they did, and it's been with script rewrites and whatnot.
they
It was shut down over.
Not so much for COVID at first; it was for writing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it looks like if you look at all the titles and kind of the differences in each of them, I think they're just trying to hit every market, and we'll see what Not everything's going to be a long series, but let's see if they can continue the Mandalorian kind of vibe and success. That would be, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people who are bought into the Mandalorian, love it, and that they're just waiting for, especially if you have to wait a year, they'll chomp at the bit at anything that comes their way that's kind of remotely similar to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
You look at Fear of the Walking Dead, not even close to being as good as Walking Dead, but people still wanted to watch Fear of the Walking Dead, right? Yeah. So
that's true.
I can't believe it's still been renewed, but it's been renewed. I haven't watched it for probably 4 years, but
I watched the first season on that, and I think, and a little bit of the second. I think I was good after that. I just kind of stopped.
But again, that's my problem. It was over to me. It got oversaturated, and so that's why I started, not following as much. So that's why I am a little concerned with so much Star Wars getting oversaturated and losing its kind of flavor.
It's true,
but
it's true.
Only time will tell.
Well, I mean, some of these projects too, they're like, oh, look at all these projects, but some of them aren't coming out to 2023 or 2022 or whatever, right? It's like, oh, it sounds like a lot until you're like, oh, there's only 1 or 2 coming out this year, 1 or 2 coming out this year. So,
but Marvel does it too with their movie. When they release their movies, they're releasing 4 years, and they plan out the 4 years, and so it looks like a lot, but it's 4 years. It's a long time to get through. So there's lots of time. They're not gonna rush anything, I hope. So
yeah. All right, guys. Thanks everyone who tuned in. All thousands of you that are watching us right now, and
hundreds of thousands. Come on.
I was trying to be a little modest.
That's all right. We're a big hit, Steve.
Again, hello to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. We're available. We will sell out, and we're available.
Yeah, we have lots of ideas. Lots of ideas you won't want to follow, for sure.
Totally. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right.
And may the force be with you again.